A traveller arrives in a village weary, tired, hungry, and in search of food and a place to sleep for the night. The village itself is poor, the people hungry, and so they hide what little food they have. Undeterred, the traveller makes a simple request for a pot. He takes that pot down to a local river, fills it with water and sets it on a fire, and it begins to boil. He then wanders around and looks for something particular. Selecting a stone, he checks it out and then decides it's the right one and puts it into the pot. One of the villagers has been watching this intriguing ritual and decides to come and investigate. He asks the traveller, "What are you doing?" The traveller stirs his soup and replies that he is making stone soup. He has a little sip and looks quite pleased with the result, but he suggests that it could do with a little bit of seasoning, just a little bit of salt. Well, his new friend's not going to withhold a tad bit of salt, so he wanders off to his home and brings back some salt, and that gets added to the soup. Well, somebody else, a woman, has been watching this carrying on, and she comes down to find out what's going on. This traveller again stirs the soup, has a taste, and says it tastes really good, this stone soup that he's making, but a few carrots wouldn't go astray. The lady brings back some carrots, they get chopped up and put in the pot. Well, as you can imagine, it doesn't take too long for more and more villagers to join this group to find out what's going on, make a new friend and have some fun together. Kale gets bought, spinach, kumara, chicken, tomatoes, it all gets added into the pot. And before long, what's brewing starts to smell really nice and everyone starts feeling quite hungry. The traveller removes the pot from the fire, stirs it one last time and takes the stone out and puts that to the side, and then he offers his soup to the village to share. What the villagers are amazed by is that when they each brought their small contribution, the extravagant feast that they are actually able to share together. When we as individuals begin to look at and value what we carry and what we can contribute, and when we begin to recognise what others can offer, then we as a community can flourish. We can live inspired by all that is around us. To me, this is the essence of community development, of community empowerment. It is making the choice to recognise and value the assets that exist within our communities and use them to explore possibilities and opportunities together. In our society, and in fact a lot of societies around the world, what we tend to focus on is the problems that exist. You only have to open a newspaper and page after page it's bad news story after bad news story after bad news story. And we tend to focus and feast on misery. But this doesn't actually give us a foundation to build off. It doesn't give us anything to build momentum from. It's like taking a half-empty cup, a half-full cup, and only looking at what is missing and what isn't available, rather than focusing on and valuing what is available to us. So in community development, a common tool that is used is a needs assessment, and that is just what the title explains, an assessment looking at the needs of a community, looking at the problems and the deficits that exist, and then coming up with solutions to fix those problems. An alternative to this is to actually start the process with looking at the assets that exist within a community, looking at the resources, valuing the collective resources, the social, natural, physical resources that exist, but then also looking at the individual skills and strengths and talents, and allowing this to generate a sense of possibility in exploring those as a community together. I have been teaching this approach and implementing projects based on this for about 8 years now. The projects that I've been involved in have been really diverse, but the outcomes have all been quite similar, and it's because in every case we have intentionally and purposefully chosen to use an asset-based and appreciative approach to the projects. In Vanuatu, there is one dentist to 30,000 people, which means that most men, women and children in their lifetime will not see a dentist. I have a friend who lives on Tana, which is a really remote island in the archipelago of Vanuatu, and she was in so much pain that she literally had to remove her own molar because there was no professionals around to help her. So this is a really extreme setting, and it's quite easy in this kind of setting to be overwhelmed by the clearly obvious problems and lacks that exist there. And a simple message like learning to clean your teeth can be life-changing. Right now, we have a team of men and women who have been trained in oral health promotion, travelling their nation and promoting oral health. This team come to New Zealand for 3 to 6 months of each year to pick and pack kiwi fruit, and during that time we have invested training and skills for them and into them so that they can go home and literally change the oral health of their nation. This year they returned home about 4 months ago, and in the last 4 months they have travelled over 10 islands in Vanuatu. They have promoted oral health in multitudes of remote and rural communities, and they've distributed over 8,000 toothbrush and toothpaste kits to children of that nation. Now this sounds big and impressive, and it really is. I am so proud of what they are achieving, but it hasn't happened or it couldn't have happened without our intentional choice to value what we do have and not get overwhelmed by what we don't have. A couple of years ago, when this program was in its infancy, we made a documentary to exhibit the pilot program when they were initially going out with their dream, and the hope of that documentary was to secure some funding. We put it out there and no major funding ever came, but one lady came forward with a simple offer, and her offer was to go and buy a toothbrush every time she went shopping and collect those over a period of time and invite her workmates and her colleagues to do the same. Now that wasn't, you know, 1 toothbrush per week, 4 per month isn't going to change a nation's oral health situation. But in that instant, we chose to value her. And I look at her and it was like we had this pot in our stone and nothing much more than that vision. And she brought that first sprinkling of salt. She contributed that initial seasoning that allowed this program to build momentum. And a couple of months later, after we'd celebrated and encouraged her, she came back with an offer, and she said, a second offer, could I take that documentary to my sister? She happens to work at Colgate. Well, we obviously weren't going to say no to that, and so the documentary went to Colgate New Zealand, and then on to Australia, and then off to the Fiji Pacific head office. And from there came a partnership for long-term support and as many toothbrushes and toothpaste as we would like every year. And that's how we've reached 8,000 children in the last 4 months. So, you know, it's amazing what's been achieved, and we can all go home and feel inspired by that and excited. You know, it's a great story of a single toothbrush, a very small contribution, the initial seasoning growing into an extravagant feast. But I feel like the risk is that when people go home, they'll suddenly turn to their old mindset of, oh, but that's not possible here in my life, in my community, because I've got these challenges or we've got these problems and barriers, and that's possible somewhere over there, but it's not possible here. And so I was challenged with that a couple of years ago too. Is this accessible and is it applicable to my own community? So we decided to test the waters. My husband had written a feature film about a community coming together, and we had shelved the script because it was budgeted at $6 million, and we didn't have that kind of money in our back pockets, and no one was going to hand it over to a first-time director. But as I began this journey of asset-based community development, we decided to take that script off the shelf and approach our wider community to come together to resource and make this film. So it literally started, again, pot, the stone. We did a mail drop down Pukehina Parade, which is a rural remote community, asking people who wants to come and make a movie with us, who wants to help make a movie. At our first meeting, we had 12 people come, and probably half of them would have been under the age of 12 and who wanted to be Hollywood movie stars. So the odds were still significantly against us at that point. But we're learning. We chose to value and appreciate this handful of volunteers, and we started to map out their skills and their strengths and their passions and extend that to who they were connected to, and then broaden that still to businesses and organisations within our community. Well, 9 months on from that mail drop, we had the world premiere of our feature film in Te Puke, and as the credits rolled, over 600 businesses, organisations and people were credited with resourcing that feature film and adding value to its production. Yeah. It was an amazing achievement. We had everything from stunties to helicopters to beachfront houses for the actors and 2,000 meat pies for the extras. It was, you know, but everybody bought their ingredient, whether it was big or small, and we valued it and appreciated it. And the momentum has continued to grow. We've now just established a trust, which has a vision to establish an international feature film and screen media production industry here in the Bay. The vision again is completely overwhelmingly massive, but the process is still straightforward and simple. Focus on what exists within our community, use that as a foundation to build from, and allow it to generate momentum by inviting the community to participate. You know, a challenge that we've been faced with is, you know, people will say, well, you don't have a Hollywood studio complex to invite, you know, big $1 million productions to, and that's true. But when we actually look at the assets that do exist within our community, we have kiwi fruit pack houses that are empty for 3 to 6 months of the year. And just like that, with a paradigm shift, a perspective change, suddenly a lofty ideal becomes a tangible possibility. It's a simple message, I feel, with really far-reaching implications. When I look at all these projects and where they've gone to and where they've reached, I look at myself and I know it's not because I'm anybody special. And I want to really earth this here and remind you, woman, that I am a woman and I'm a mum. I've got a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. I like gardening and I've got a terrible back, which my friends will be able to tell you, and those two things aren't compatible. So it's not because I don't want you to go away and think, oh, she's different from me and she's somebody special. It's not because I'm somebody special. It's because I choose to believe that in everybody there is amazing potential, and I believe that you are all just as special, and that we've been created with a gold inside of us that when we start recognizing what we can contribute and what we carry, that can reach so many people. When we connect with each other, when we celebrate the value that exists within each other, then all manner of creativity and possibility are achievable. So I want to encourage you this evening, go home and revisit maybe some of those impossible dreams that you have tucked away and buried because you didn't believe that the resource existed to make them possible. I don't believe in the impossible, but go back and have a look at those things that you might have written off as impossible. And I would encourage you, bring them out. And the next step is to be brave and be courageous. Take them out to your community, whether that's a group of your friends or whether that's the wider community, whatever that is to you, and invite them. Take your pot, take your stone, and invite them to create a soup together and allow them to bring their ingredients. And you know, that soup will brew and it will inspire vision and hope and direction. And I can almost guarantee you that you will be amazed at the feast that you, woman, that I am a woman and I'm a mum. I've got a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. I like gardening and I've got a terrible back, which my friends will be able to tell you, and those two things aren't compatible. So it's not because I don't want you to go away and think, oh, she's different from me and she's somebody special. It's not because I'm somebody special. It's because I choose to believe that in everybody there is amazing potential. And I believe that you are all just as special, and that we've been created with a gold inside of us that when we start recognizing what we can contribute and what we carry that can reach so many people. When we connect with each other, when we celebrate the value that exists within each other, then all manner of creativity and possibility are achievable. So I want to encourage you this evening, go home and revisit maybe some of those impossible dreams that you have tucked away and buried because you didn't believe that the resource existed to make them possible. I don't believe in the impossible, but go back and have a look at those things that you might have written off as impossible. And I would encourage you, bring them out. And the next step is to be brave and be courageous. Take them out to your community, whether that's a group of your friends or whether that's the wider community, whatever that is to you, and invite them. Take your pot, take your stone, and invite them to create a soup together and allow them to bring their ingredients. And you know, that soup will brew and it will inspire vision and hope and direction. And I can almost guarantee you that you will be amazed at the feast that you get to celebrate together.